Good evening, all. So we have come back with a very controversial and interesting topic, which and a lot of people think about, and it controls our daily life. And we will talk about the concept of capitalism. And is capitalism good for the society? Is it a good framework for us to proceed in the 21st century? Or maybe it's not it's not the right framework. So I will shed my opinion on this on capitalism, and with this introduction I shall start. So capitalism has benefited the society and humanity tremendously. We have seen a lot of innovations emerge because of capitalism. A lot of intellectual property emerge because of capitalism. We have seen a great level of wealth preservation because of capitalism. So the reason why capitalism actually was created is to preserve wealth, and that purpose was achieved. And for the purpose of innovation, it has also helped in innovation, in creating more innovations and creating a much better world, a more technologically advanced world for a more technologically advanced world. To that point, I think capitalism was a good force for good. Now, what are the problems that has emerged because of capitalism? There is a very clear problem that I think no one can even deny it, which is the great levels of inequality. So inequality has spread because the 1% of the, for example, one of the examples of inequality is that the richest 1% of the world controls more than 50% of the world wealth. And to that extent, this is a very big problem. Why it's a problem? Because it's create a great level of despair. It's logically against justice. It's against many religious values, which these framework, social framework, actually being followed by the majority of human beings across the globe. So it creates this level of, let me say, this level of inequality, this level of injustice, create levels of contradiction within our society, which will lead to conflicts, which will lead to some levels of dissatisfaction. So for that reason, I think it's very important that we try to create a more harmonious society, a more cohesive society, a society that is looking forward for the future and building the future with a great level of motivation. So my opinion about it, that countries like Sweden or some countries in Europe have taxed rich people more. That's the first thing, the first approach to tackle the problem of inequality, that you tax the rich, you tax the richest more. But however, it's not even enough, because sometimes some of these rich people just fled away from the country, or they move their capital somewhere else, or they try to evade some taxes and regulation in a way or another. So I think you need another framework, a parallel system to solve the problem of inequality that was created by capitalism. And my thoughts on this topic, that you need the parallel system should be something associated with things like charity, and we see a lot of people around the world doing something like that. We see this even part of some religious beliefs, where you have some compulsory tax, and you have some kind of voluntary tax. However, we need to do something a little bit different. I think the parallel system can be that your charity has to do some impacts on certain things. And we see people like Bill Gates, people like Warren Buffett, people like Mark Zuckerberg are doing a great work in these areas. They are trying to do some work on education, some work on healthcare, some work on energy. And we see some people actually thinking about some work in terms of giving the child the best possible opportunity. So that's a very good work. But I think you need some level of transparency with these charity, that you should always achieve a certain target. And I think a parallel system that can be that those richest have a compulsory role to do investments on the long run, investments that does not look fair in terms of capitalism, investments that maybe some have an environmental impact, investments that maybe that have some long-term impact that is not clear, that sometimes cannot be measured, investment in environment, investment in education, investment in healthcare, and these investments should be compulsory. So if the other framework was compulsory investment, somehow you will pay your tax, and part of your investment should be going to some compulsory domains, and these domains should be within our region, and it should be something like it could be something related to environment, it could be something related to education, it could be something related to talent, it could be something related to innovation. The main thing is that these investments should really help to push the society forward in the long run, because these investments, when you look at them, let me say, when you look at these investments on the short term, you say, oh, this is I am not going to capitalize on this. So these kinds of investments, you tell the richest, you have to adhere to long-term commitments. It can make you richer, or it can make you, or it can create a more equal world, a much better world. This is the question that we need to think about. After implementing these two frameworks, we will need to think about, are we going to preserve our wealth? Is our wealth going to be preserved because of this? And this is the main purpose of capitalism. So if we created these two systems, will we be able to preserve our wealth? So this is the fundamental question that will be asked at the end. And I think a lot of people actually, many countries have been weakened in comparison with the richest or with corporations, because there was no channels for compulsory investment on long-term strategic assets from the country. And this is what everyone is trying to think about, public-private partnership. And this is, we need to cooperate on different investments, and we need to we need to bring the private and the public sector working together. And I agree, but without a compulsory way for doing these things, long-term achievements will not happen. So let us see if this kind of idea or thought can find traction, because if it has found traction, I think it can be a very good middle way between extreme capitalism and some kind of higher taxes to the rich. So that's my thoughts on this. I think, what do you think of the Islam views of current capitalism? Muhammad Adil Awadi asked. So I think Islam definitely does not promote inequality. So there is one saying for Prophet Muhammad that if you are hungry and your neighbor is struggling, then it's an issue. Then maybe your belief is not as strong as it should be. But I think Islam actually promoted capitalism. Then somehow it has put some compulsory tax and some kind of charity. But I think the way that Islam focused on concepts like brotherhood, concepts like helping others, concepts like being just to other people, and concepts like caring, and concepts like empathy, I think it was supportive of capitalism, but it was not, let me say, it was not supportive of the levels of the inequality that it has created. So, and there is always this saying, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ مَا يُزَكِّيهِمْ, saying that actually by taking some of their money, you might make them a better people. So that's my view, but I think we should not focus on what is Islam view on this. We should really focus, this capitalism was a system that was not created by religion. It was created by a lot of accumulated experiences of policy making and on different sectors. And I think we have a problem, and this problem is clear, and there's always the discussion: should we tax them more, or should we tax them less? Should we tax them more, or should we tax them less? And this question is endless. You really need someone to get out of this argument and say, okay, we can tax you less, or we can tax you more, depending on how much you do from these long-term compulsory investments. If you do long-term compulsory investments, then we'll tax you less. If you don't do these long-term compulsory investments, then I think it's an issue. So that's my thoughts on the topic. I think it's it's an idea that's worth promoting. And on that end, I shall say salam.